Welcome to Brightside. Today we are going to discuss React Interview Question Part 2. So let's get started. What is the difference between create element and clone element? JSX elements will be transpiled to create element, functions to create React elements which are going to be used for the object representation of UI. Whereas clone element is used to clone an element and pass it new props. What is lifting state up in React? When several components need to share the same changing data, then it is recommended to lift the shared state up to their closest common ancestor. That means if two child components share the same data from its parent, then move the state to parent instead of maintaining local state in both of the child components. What are the different phases of component lifecycle? The component lifecycle consists mounting, updating and unmounting. Number 1, mounting. The component is ready to mount in the browser DOM. This phase covers initialization from constructor, get derived state from props, render, and component didMount lifecycle methods. Number 2, updating. In this phase, the component get updated in two ways: sending the new props and updating the state either from setState or force update. This phase covers get derived state from props, should component update, render, get snapshot before update, and component did update lifecycle methods. Number 3, unmounting. In this last phase, the component is not needed and get unmounted from the browser DOM. This phase includes component will unmount lifecycle method. What are higher-order components? A higher-order component is a function that takes a component and returns a new component. Basically, it's a pattern that is derived from React's compositional nature. We call them pure components because they can accept any dynamically provided child component, but they won't modify or copy any behavior from their input components. Higher-order component can be used for many use cases. 1. Code reuse, logic and bootstrap abstraction. 2. Render hijacking. 3. State abstraction and manipulation. 4. Props manipulation. What is context? Context provides a way to pass data through the component tree without having to pass props down manually at every level. For example, authenticated user, local preference, UI theme need to be accessed in the application by many components. What is children prop? Children is a prop, this props children, that allow you to pass components as data to other components, just like any other prop you use. Component tree put between components opening and closing tag will be passed to that component as children prop. There are a number of methods available in the React API to work with this prop. These include React Children Map, React Children for each, React Children Count, React Children Only, React Children to Array. What is reconciliation? When a component's props or state change, React decides whether an actual DOM update is necessary by comparing the newly returned element with the previously rendered one. When they are not equal, React will update the DOM. This process is called reconciliation. How to set state with a dynamic key name. If you are using ES6 or the Babel transpiler to transform your JSX code, then you can accomplish this with computed property names. Is lazy function supports named exports? No, currently React. Lazy function supports default exports only. If you would like to import modules which are named exports, you can create an intermediate module that re-exports it as the default. It also ensures that tree shaking keeps working and don't pull unused components. Why React uses classname over class attribute? Class is a key word in JavaScript, and JSX is an extension of JavaScript. That's the principal reason why React uses classname instead of class. Pass a string as the classname prop. What are fragments? It's common pattern in React which is used for a component to return multiple elements. Fragments let you group a list of children without adding extra nodes to the DOM. Why fragments are better than container devs? Number 1. Fragments are a bit faster and use less memory by not creating an extra DOM node. This only has a real benefit on very large and deep trees. Number 2. Some CSS mechanisms like Flexbox and CSS Grid have a special parent-child relationships, and adding devs in the middle makes it hard to keep the desired layout. Number 3. The DOM inspector is less cluttered. What are portals in React? Portal is a recommended way to render children into a DOM node that exists outside the DOM hierarchy of the parent component. What are stateless components? If the behavior is independent of its state, then it can be a stateless component. You can use either a function or a class for creating stateless components. But unless you need to use a lifecycle hook in your components, you should go for function components. There are a lot of benefits if you decide to use function components here. They are easy to write, understand, and test, a little faster, and you can avoid the this keyword altogether. What are stateful components? If the behavior of a component is dependent on the state of the component, then it can be termed as stateful component. These stateful components are always class components and have a state that gets initialized in the constructor. How to apply validation on props in React. When the application is running in development mode, React will automatically check all props that we set on components to make sure they have correct type. If the type is incorrect, React will generate warning messages in the console. It's disabled in production mode due to performance impact. The mandatory props are defined with is required. What are the advantages of React? Increases the application's performance with virtual DOM. JSX makes code easy to read and write. It renders both on client and server side. Easy to integrate with frameworks, Angular, Backbone, since it is only a Vue library. Easy to write unit and integration tests with tools such as Jest. What are the limitations of React? React is just a Vue library, not a full framework. There is a learning curve for beginners who are new to web development. Integrating React into a traditional MVC framework requires some additional configuration. The code complexity increases with inline templating and JSX. Too many smaller components leading to over-engineering or boilerplate. What are the recommended ways for static type checking? Normally we use prop types library. React prop types moved to a prop types package since React version 15, for type checking in the React applications. For large code bases, it is recommended to use static type checkers such as Flow or TypeScript, that perform type checking at compile time and provide auto-completion features. What is the use of React DOM package? The React Document Object Model package provides DOM-specific methods that can be used at the top level of your app. Most of the components are not required to use this module. Some of the methods of this package are render, hydrate, unmount component at node, find DOM node, create portal. What is the purpose of render method of React DOM? This method is used to render a React element into the DOM in the supplied container and return a reference to the component. If the React element was previously rendered into container, it will perform an update on it and only mutate the DOM as necessary to reflect the latest changes. What is React DOM Server? The React DOM Server object enables you to render components to static markup, typically used on Node Server. This object is mainly used for server-side rendering. The following methods can be used in both the server and browser environments: render to string, and render to static markup. How to use inner HTML in React. The dangerously set inner HTML attribute is React's replacement for using inner HTML in the browser DOM. Just like inner HTML, it is risky to use this attribute considering cross-site scripting attacks. You just need to pass a double underscore HTML object as key and HTML text as value. How to use styles in React. The style attribute accepts a JavaScript object with camel-cased properties rather than a CSS string. This is consistent with the DOM style JavaScript property, is more efficient, and prevents XSS security holes. How events are different in React. Handling events in React elements has some syntactic differences. React event handlers are named using camel-case, rather than lowercase. With JSX you pass a function as the event handler, rather than a string. What will happen if you use setState in Constructor? When you use setState, then apart from assigning to the object state, React also re-renders the component and all its children. You would get error like this: can only update a mounted or mounting component. So we need to use this state to initialize variables inside Constructor. Is it good to use setState in component-will-mount method? Yes, it is safe to use setState inside component-will-mount method. But at the same it is recommended to avoid async initialization in component-will-mount lifecycle method. Component-will-mount is invoked immediately before mounting occurs. It is called before render, therefore setting state in this method will not trigger a re-render. Avoid introducing any side effects or subscriptions in this method. We need to make sure async calls for component initialization happened in component didMount, instead of component will mount. What will happen if you use props in initial state? If the props on the component are changed without the component being refreshed, the new prop value will never be displayed because the constructor function will never update the current state of the component. The initialization of state from props only runs when the component is first created. How do you conditionally render components? In some cases, you want to render different components depending on some state. JSX does not render false or undefined, so you can use conditional short-circuiting to render a given part of your component only if a certain condition is true. How you implement server-side rendering or SSR. React is already equipped to handle rendering on node servers. A special version of the DOM renderer is available, which follows the same pattern as on the client side. How to enable production mode in React. You should use Webpack's define plugin method to set node env to production, by which it strip out things like prop type validation and extra warnings. Apart from this, if you minify the code, for example, Uglify's dead code elimination to strip out development-only code and comments, it will drastically reduce the size of your bundle. What is CRA? The Create React App CLI tool allows you to quickly create and run React applications with no configuration step. What are CRA benefits? It includes everything we need to build a React app: React, JSX, ES6, and Flow syntax support. Language extras beyond ES6 like the object spread operator. Auto-prefixed CSS, so you don't need WebKit or other prefixes. A fast interactive unit test runner with built-in support for coverage reporting. A live development server that warns about common mistakes. A build script to bundle JS, CSS, and images for production, with hashes and source maps. What is the lifecycle methods order in mounting? The lifecycle methods are called in the following order when an instance of a component is being created and inserted into the DOM. Constructor. Static get derived state from props. Render. Component did mount. What is the recommended ordering of methods in component class? Static methods. Constructor. Get child context. Component will mount. Component did mount. Component will receive props. Should component update. Component will update. Component did update. Component will unmount. Click handlers or event handlers like on click submit, or on change description. Getter methods for render like get select reason, or get footer content. Optional render methods like render navigation, or render profile picture. Render. What is a switching component? A switching component is a component that renders one of many components. We need to use object to map prop values to components. Why we need to pass a function to setState. The reason behind for this is that setState is an asynchronous operation. React batches state changes for performance reasons, so the state may not change immediately after setState is called. That means you should not rely on the current state when calling setState, since you can't be sure what that state will be. The solution is to pass a function to setState, with the previous state as an argument. By doing this you can avoid issues with the user getting the old state value on access due to the asynchronous nature of setState. What are React Mixins? Mixins are a way to totally separate components to have a common functionality. Mixins should not be used and can be replaced with higher order components or decorators. One of the most commonly used mixins is pure render mixin. You might be using it in some components to prevent unnecessary re-renders when the props and state are shallowly equal to the previous props and state. What are the pointer events supported in React? Pointer events provide a unified way of handling all input events. In the old days we had a mouse and respective event listeners to handle them, but nowadays we have many devices which don't correlate to having a mouse, like phones with touch surface or pens. We need to remember that these events will only work in browsers that support the pointer event specification. The following event types are now available in React DOM. Why should component names start with capital letter? If you are rendering your component using JSX, the name of that component has to begin with a capital letter, otherwise React will throw an error as unrecognized tag. This convention is because only HTML elements and SVG tags can begin with a lowercase letter. Can you force a component to re-render without calling setState? By default, when your component's state or props change, your component will re-render. If your render method depends on some other data, you can tell React that the component needs re-rendering by calling forceUpdate. It is recommended to avoid all uses of forceUpdate, and only read from this props and this state in render. What is the difference between React and React DOM? The React package contains React Create Element, React Component, React Children, and other helpers related to elements and component classes. You can think of these as the isomorphic or universal helpers that you need to build components. The React DOM package contains React DOM Render, and in React DOM Server we have server-side rendering support with React DOM Server Render to String, and React DOM Server Render to Static Markup. Why React DOM is separated from React? The React team worked on extracting all DOM-related features into a separate library called React DOM. React version 0.14 is the first release in which the libraries are split. By looking at some of the packages, React Native, React Art, React Canvas, and React 3, it has become clear that the beauty and essence of React has nothing to do with browsers or the DOM. What is the difference between setState and replaceState methods? When you use setState, the current and previous states are merged. ReplaceState throws out the current state, and replaces it with only what you provide. Usually setState is used unless you really need to remove all previous keys for some reason. You can also set state to false, null in setState, instead of using replaceState. Why you can't update props in React? The React philosophy is that props should be immutable and top-down. This means that a parent can send any prop values to a child, but the child can't modify received props.